The more you know, the more you realize how little you know. It's an old idea, but strangely enough, it perfectly describes competitive games. A bad player dies and thinks, this is unfair. A good player dies and asks, what did I miss? And the weird part, the second player often feels worse. Not because they're playing worse, but because they're looking for a different answer. And the explanation you choose after failure might be the single biggest difference between a player who improves and players who are stuck. And later in this video, we will talk about the #1 skill that even veterans with over thousands of hours in competitive games still miss. But first, we need to talk about why humans desperately need explanations in the first place. Because humans hate uncertainty. Our brains constantly search for explanations. We want to know why things happen. And honestly, we don't even need the explanation to be correct. We just need an explanation. Because explanations create certainty. And certainty feels good. You die and you immediately think, my teammates were useless. The weapon is overpowered. The matchmaking is terrible. And the game is unfair. And here's the important part. Sometimes these explanations are true. Sometimes the weapon the enemy used really is overpowered. Sometimes the matchmaking really is terrible. And sometimes you genuinely get unlucky. The problem isn't that these explanations are always wrong. The problem is that most of them don't help you. They only make you feel better, but they rarely make you better. And that difference changes everything.
Wait, so people don't actually want the truth?
Not always. Most people want certainty. And certainty is often much more comfortable than the truth. But comfortable explanations come with a hidden cost. Imagine two players dying in the exact same situation. You play sniper and you push a compound and get one hit by a shotgun. Player number 1 might say, the shotgun in this game is completely overpowered. But player number 2 might ask, why was I even close enough to the shotgun that this mattered? Now here's the interesting part. The shotgun might actually be overpowered. And player 1 might be completely correct with this assumption. But player 2 asked a much more useful question. Because player 2 still has control. Maybe he rotated badly. Maybe he pushed too aggressively. Maybe he ignored information. Maybe he took a fight he shouldn't have taken. Or to say it simply, the explanation hurts more. But it also creates a solution. And that's the trap. Comfortable explanations protect your ego. Useful explanations improve your gameplay. And over hundreds of hours, those small questions completely change a player's development. But this becomes much easier to understand with an example. I recently started playing Marathon. And honestly, in the beginning I died a lot. And I really mean a lot. I lost fights constantly. And I could have chosen the comfortable explanation for that. I could have said, people already have better gear than me, because I started mid-season. I could have said the enemy knows the meta better than me. Or they're all using overpowered equipment. And to be fair, some of that might be true, but none of those explanations would have helped me. Instead, I asked different questions. Do I understand the maps well enough? Do I know which sound cues actually matter? Can I reliably distinguish AI sounds from player sounds? Do I understand how experienced players rotate through the map? The answer to all of those questions was pretty simple. No, I don't. I simply wasn't good enough yet. And strangely enough, that realization wasn't frustrating. Instead, it was much more motivating for me. Because if the problem is my understanding, then I can improve. And suddenly, every death becomes information, not an insult to my ego. And that's a completely different mindset.
So basically, I should just blame myself for everything?
No. And that is exactly where many players completely misunderstand that idea. This video isn't about you blaming yourself for every mistake. Because sometimes the game really is unfair. Sometimes the weapon is overpowered. And sometimes the matchmaking is unfair. Like that one boss in Tekken 6, where you just have to get lucky to defeat him. Those things exist. The goal is not to ignore reality. It is to ask a different kind of question. Not whose fault was it, but rather, what can I learn from this? And those are completely different questions. One protects the ego, while the other creates growth. And that's the hidden shift that differentiates strong players from frustrated ones. Strong players don't necessarily experience less frustration. They simply turn frustration into investigation. And once you start doing that, something strange happens. You begin seeing more and more mistakes, which brings us to another uncomfortable truth. The better you become, the more mistakes you notice. Beginners often feel surprisingly confident because they usually don't know how little they know. Veterans are the opposite. They notice every mistake. They notice positioning mistakes. They notice information they missed. They notice inefficient decisions. They notice problems in themselves, their teammates, and in game systems. And because of that, veterans often feel worse than beginners. Not because they're worse players, but because awareness destroys certainty. Where the beginner might think he knows why he died, the veteran can tell you 10 reasons why you did. And strangely enough, That uncertainty is usually a sign of growth, not failure. But there's one more reason why improvement often feels invisible. The hidden skill that I teased in the beginning of this video isn't aim. It's not positioning, movement, or game knowledge. The hidden skill is the ability to choose useful explanations instead of comfortable explanations. Because every failure gives you two stories. The story that protects your ego and the story that helps you improve. The first story feels better today. The second story, however, makes you better tomorrow. And the longer you choose the second story, the faster you improve. Not only in games, but everywhere else too. Because this has nothing to do with Hunt Showdown, or Marathon, or any other game out there. Think about software development as example. Why does one developer stagnate after 10 years, while another one gets exceptionally good after 3? It's rarely intelligence or talent. The best developers constantly question themselves. They look at their code and ask, how could I have done this better? They actively search for mistakes. And that's exactly what great players do too. The explanation you choose after failure determines whether you improve or whether you stay exactly the way you are. And by the way, if you enjoy short high-density analysis like this one, focus on why improvement feels confusing and where players misinterpret their own progress. That's exactly what this channel does. Subscribing makes sense.